Hi, welcome to Neuroverse, a podcast hosted by Carolina
and Clara, where we discuss all matters from neuroscience to philosophy and beyond.
Hi, welcome to 2024 Reviewed Off the Record. Today we're just gonna chat with you guys about the year 2024 and all of the really cool episodes that we did and the projects that we achieved, and yeah,
it's just going to be a little reflection on the year, as we've been doing for the past 2 years that we've been doing the podcast. That's crazy.
It is crazy. I think we released like 23 episodes this year.
And this is our 90th episode, which is so exciting because it's almost 100.
It is.
That is also crazy. I still don't feel like a podcaster.
No.
I still don't feel like I'm experienced in the world of podcasting.
No, it's still just like the two of us and a couple microphones in a room.
Yeah. Very raw.
Yeah.
And it will always be that way. Okay, so why don't we start by sharing a little bit about what we found to be the most fun episodes to record and our favorite topics that we discussed this year.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I have a list.
I'm pretty sure you said the same thing last year.
I think I did.
And I was like, I don't have a list.
I remember you were like, I have one, like top one. Well, I couldn't choose, so I have 8 episodes that are my top.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm gonna do it in chronological order from like early year to now. So the first one that we did this year happens to also be one of my favorite ones, which is Philosophy of Sound. That was a really fun episode, and it was a bit of an echo of the previous year's Philosophy of Color.
No pun intended.
Oh my god, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so apparently we were saying last year, and now we're going to say again, that next year's first episode also needs to be philosophy of some sensation.
Yeah, it has to be. We need to continue the tradition.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a really fun episode. We got to talking about like theory of mind and what is sound.
And physics as
and
well.
Physics.
Physics.
And you were so funny in that episode because you were saying things like, what did you say? You said something like, I don't believe silence is a thing, or I don't believe sound is a thing.
Yeah, I just don't believe. I'm just a non-believer.
Yeah, which is hilarious to me. So if you want to know a bit more about the details of what drove us to that conclusion, yeah, do check it out. It was a fun one.
Yeah. I have to say now that I think that was probably my favorite episode, because I think we had like loads of guest speakers this year, probably more than the year before, which is always really fun and like informative, and I always learn so much. But that one was like a classic Neuroverse, just Clara and Carolina discussing our always contrasting opinions.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
always agree.
Yeah, but we come at it from different angles.
Really different angles.
Yeah.
And then we always basically make exceptions to our arguments to then make it sound like we agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also usually go like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just to keep the peace.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, my second favorite, like this one I think was my favorite one. It was Love on the Brain.
You were gonna say that.
Our 2-year anniversary special. It was such a fun episode discussing what is love and whether it's just stress, whether it's dopamine, whether it has similar mechanisms with like drug addiction, also attachment styles and the psychology of love. It was a very classical Neuroverse episode because we talked about neuroscience, philosophy, our own personal like opinions and anecdotes on it. Yeah, I
think it was really multifaceted, and it was definitely really fun and also kind of scary to do because I was being so influenced by my personal experiences when I was like preparing for the episode or thinking about it, and also during, and I was trying to like stay a little bit detached because it's hard to discuss love without like thinking about how you act in love or like your love experiences that you've had. It's just challenging, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I hope that in the future we can continue to do, well, because our 2-year anniversary falls on Valentine's Day. That's why we did the episode. And yeah, we would love to do another love related episode, similar but definitely unique and different, next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Some ideas I have floating around would be something related to like the evolution of love and how we grew to be a society, and whether love had a role in it. I understand what you were saying about how it's difficult to have an episode on love and not think about your own experiences, but I also felt it was so validating, like reading all the research and understanding a bit more about the mechanisms and what drives us to do certain things and think certain ways, like how the prefrontal cortex gets inhibited. And I'm like, well, that makes so much sense now.
My prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed, according to science.
Yeah. So
I'm allowed to act crazy.
Yeah, it's like double whammy when you're in love. It's an underdeveloped, inhibited prefrontal cortex. Wow. So yeah, that was really fun. And then, I really enjoyed Women's Reproductive Health with Professor Sohair El-Nil. That was so insightful to understand where we are in terms of women's research, the progress we have made, but also what we have to do as well.
She's such an expert in the field, and the way she spoke about it was so admirable.
She was so clear and inspiring.
Yeah, like she was very clear about, based on where we are, what we can then do, or like what would actually serve women and how we can include them in making decisions, like research decisions, etc. And that was like, it was so solution oriented.
Yeah, it was. She was very like, not only she's a doctor, but she does research and very much involved with policy making. So I think, that combination is so powerful, and I always admire scientists that do really strive to make an impact based on their research. So that was an amazing episode. Interoception. I loved that episode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was interesting because I had actually learned about it through teaching experiences. And yeah, I just found it so fascinating. I was like, okay, we have to do an episode. But now it's like stuck in my mind because of that, like as a topic. And I think it really brought to light, that episode really brought to light how little we understand interoception.
Yeah, I like how we have these themes. I think we often come to, every once in a while we'll do an episode, and for me it really touches on like mental health and mindfulness. And this was one of those episodes where when I listen back to it, it's so insightful. Like, wow, just being aware of things like your heartbeat and your temperature can play such a big role in also your sense of self and your thoughts and the way you can manage things. And it is very insightful to be aware of all of these different states that we have. Another fascinating episode was the evolution of self-medication with Dr. Elodie Freeman. It was incredible going through the journey that she went through in the forests of Uganda. I felt like I was there with her, with the way that she described. She was such an incredible storyteller, and the message of how chimpanzees learn to distinguish what is food versus what is medicine, and how that translates to humans and how we approach things. Yeah, that was a wonderful episode. I feel like I was immersed in her world.
Yeah, I think you stole my tops already. I think probably besides Philosophy of Sound, it would definitely be that one with Elodie, and she is such a good like science communicator, and it's amazing the work she's done, but also what impact it has and the way that she is able to communicate what impact it has, and kind of give these chimpanzees a voice. And it's such a... can I tell you the story of how
of course you can. This is off the record.
Off the record. It's really funny how we met, because I basically ordered something online and gotten it delivered to my old address. And I bet you would never expect the story of how I met a podcast guest speaker to start in that way. But that's how it began, and it got delivered, and then I got a message from Elodie on Instagram, and I didn't know who this was at all, but she was apparently living in my old flat and had received the parcel, so I went to pick it up, and then that's when I saw through Instagram that she was doing a PhD in evolutionary anthropology. And so I thought, hey, that could be an interesting thing to discuss on the podcast if she would be up for it. And yeah, her whole Instagram as well, which I would highly recommend checking out, has so much information about her experiences being like a field scientist, and amazing videos that she's recorded in the forests, and lots of information all about her work and beyond, and the art that she does as well. And so that's how I thought that, okay, maybe like I could ask her about it. And so that's when we met, when I went to go pick up my parcel.
It's such an amazing story. I love it. I feel like only in London, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Such a London thing to happen. Another one that I really enjoyed was BCI Breakthroughs, the therapeutic progress of brain-computer interfaces. It was just a really fun episode to research, because I knew that brain-computer interfaces were making strides, but I didn't know specific examples and just quite how good they were. So that was really good to inform myself and to get a really good understanding of the field. So I enjoyed that one for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was nice to discover like some really recent research, because yeah, this is like, BCI is something you always hear about or see in like news articles, and you don't really know the state of it. And I think some of the examples we discussed in that episode were like really mind-blowing to me. Like, I didn't know those things were possible. I still can't quite get my head around it, but it's a really exciting field.
Yeah, I was also surprised by how good they were.
Mm-hmm.
And then another episode that we released quite recently is Mice Playing Poker with Anduan, where we discuss some really fun behavioral paradigms that she's developed. One of my favorite ones was the one that probed at stochasticity. So basically trying to get the mice to be as random as they could in their decision making. They were playing against a computer, and I think they had to like either select left or right. And if the computer could predict their next move, they wouldn't get a reward. But if they were random enough and throw off the computer, then they would. And it was just so insane, because so much of decision-making research and all of behavioral training is, you know, training mice to do really specific behaviors. And this is also training mice to do a specific behavior. But because it's random, it's just so different from what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah. Our reaction to it is kind of mirroring the point of the paradigm, if you understand what I mean. Like, the stochasticity, the paradigm is about stochasticity, and it's the stochasticity that's like surprising us to the extent of like amazement.
Yeah.
But that was probably one of the, if not the most enlightening moments I've had on the podcast. I don't know what it was about the way she explained this paradigm that just really got to me as well. I just remember being like, oh my gosh, how have I never thought about this before? This is the most amazing thing. This is the only thing we should ever be doing with mice. Yeah, I had a really extreme reaction to that in a good way.
I love
in a
that.
positive way.
Yeah.
But it was so cool. Yeah, I think Anne made everything sound so interesting, and it was so clear like how she's driven by her genuine interest and passion in these really complicated questions, and how she has no fear in trying to address them.
Yeah. So, it was amazing. And the way that she was applying for PI positions while she was pregnant, like completely fearless. Yeah. It was amazing. And how she was saying that, you know, she was relying on a center, a place that would have, you know, the courage and the vision to not only let someone that hasn't been able to carry out these experiments, because obviously they don't have a lab yet, but also very few other people have been able to do it. So to be able to gamble, pun intended, on her like that, I think was amazing. And her research, you know, it speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like it made me realize, and of course I kind of knew this, but I hadn't quite realized how important it was, in that it's important for us to have some level of randomness in our behavior as well as maybe our thoughts. And that also for me equates a little bit with uncertainty. You know, if a prey has a behavior that the predator can't predict, like the behavior is uncertain, and like so much of our life is uncertain. And you know, learning to be comfortable with uncertainty is something I'm constantly trying to do, and to see it being valued in an evolutionary sense is kind of nice.
Yeah, I feel like humans think a lot about uncertainty, but do we actually face more uncertainty than animals? Probably, because we live in such a complicated world where we like add so many factors.
Yeah.
That like also because of complex social interactions.
Yeah.
There's a lot more degrees of freedom in a way for like uncertainty to happen.
Yeah.
But obviously then, even in a scientific experimental context of when you try to simplify everything and like eliminate any confounding factors or things that are gonna like influence the results, and you try to simplify everything, there's still so much variability that can happen in the behavior and just like randomness, that it's a good reminder you have to take that into account. Like there's no point trying to reduce it all the way down. You still need a certain level of like randomness. I guess. Yeah,
that makes sense. Do you think that humans are the most unpredictable thing? Do you think people are the most unpredictable thing that we'll encounter in our lives?
Ooh, love that question. Like physical thing to encounter.
Yes.
Well, I guess intuitively yes, because I can't think of anything else that would be more.
See, I agree with you. I think people are so unpredictable. Yeah. But I've had many other friends of mine say that they find people extremely predictable.
Well, in a way, we also understand a human perspective better than any other perspective.
Well, yeah, so, it's the only one. We don't know what it's like to be a mouse.
Yeah, but we guess.
Okay.
But yes, we don't ultimately know.
Yeah.
Actually, I just started reading this book, Other Mind. I think it's called Other Minds, about cephalopods and other forms of intelligence. And it's really popular amongst neuroscientists, I think.
Oh, I'll
It was really
check
interesting.
it out.
I've only just started it, but it was basically saying how like we will never know what it's like to be an octopus, and how they gained intelligence that is such high level intelligence, but it was under a completely different evolutionary path. Like we split away from cephalopods so many millions of years ago, and they developed like somewhat independently from human intelligence. So that means that arguably it's even more difficult to understand what it's like to be them than something that's on the same like evolutionary path as us.
Yeah,
that's just like a less evolutionarily developed creature. But why was I mentioning this? Because because as I was reading that as well, I was thinking like, obviously we're never going to know what it's like to be a cephalopod or any other animal or even another human. Like we just won't know. There's no point discussing it. Yeah, but my point was that because we are human and we can understand other humans better than other creatures, we can still predict more reliably at least why somebody would do something. Like a lot of our behavior is actually guessing what other people will do or how other people will feel, and then acting in a way that will serve them in a way that we would like to be served, basically empathy and other sorts of social behaviors like that.
And theory of mind as well. Like, so yes, they're very unpredictable because there's so many factors that could shape behavior. There's like maybe more drivers for behavior than in animals. Like in mice, it's mainly goal-oriented or like reward, food and water-oriented. But in humans, there's like other things that drive our behavior, like not wanting to be lonely. I don't know, Yeah.
But then at the same time, like we understand human psychology. We don't know anything really about like animal psychology, right?
Yeah. I get that there is a spectrum, and that, like you said, on the one hand, we can more easily predict human behavior in a way, but at the same time, like, because there are so many variables, I guess I find it very challenging oftentimes.
Yeah.
I think people are really random sometimes.
Do you think you yourself are random?
Like if I surprise myself with the things that I do, sometimes. I'm impulsive sometimes. Yeah. So I guess because I am like that, I think I assume other people are like that too, which is why it adds that.
So you find it surprising if they're not?
I guess because I'm taking into account if they are like me and they have that level of randomness, then I think I know that there is a certain set of predictable behaviors they'll do, but the likelihood of doing unpredictable behaviors is just as big, if not bigger, because the randomness factor is bigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I guess that's where the problem lies, that to understand humans, it's all in relation to ourselves.
Yeah.
Whereas to understand animals, it's not so much in relation to ourselves. Maybe that's what makes it complicated.
But maybe that's also why it makes it so easy in a way to understand other animals, because we can just characterize their behaviors like they're not in relation to us. We're not necessarily subjective.
Yeah.
It's more like, when mice groom, that's what it looks like. When mice mate, like that's what it is. They're goal oriented. They reward seeking. And humans, like you just said, it's in relation to us.
Yeah. Yeah, but then actually when I think about it, I'm realizing more and more that animals are really unpredictable, because I don't know them unless I study them. Even mice, which I technically study, I really don't understand their behavior. Like if, different mice have different personalities.
Yeah.
I don't know why one mouse is anxious and the other is not.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand so much about their behavior, and even more so if you think, reflecting back on the episode with Elodie, like if we think about chimpanzees, I don't know anything about chimpanzee social behavior and why they fight or why they play, or even reflecting on also another episode I really enjoyed was with Professor Sophie Scott, where we talked about laughter.
Yeah.
Because in that one we also mentioned primates and humans compared to other animals and what the role of laughter is in a social context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think actually there's so many animals out there and their behaviors are all so different. I mean, there's such a variety of behaviors that some species show and others do not. And the purposes can be anything. And I don't know all of them. So actually it's very confusing. You can't just apply your knowledge of one species to another.
Sure. Like if you want to go in the fine-grained detail, yeah, like some mice they have different personalities, but overall, this is what reward-seeking behavior looks like. This is what pain looks like. This is what like comfort and grooming looks like. This is what fighting looks like. Like those are like very well defined. But yeah, if you want to go down to like the minute detail, they are different from each other, but I still find it easier.
I see what you mean, but I think like a big reason for that is the fact that we don't need to go into the detail with the animals.
Yeah.
Also, it's different when the animals are in the wild, right? Because if they're like foraging for some food and they choose to go somewhere to get some food and they choose to go somewhere else to eat it, like we don't know why they chose that. But if it was our friend, our human friend,
foraging in the wild,
we would know that they chose to go to Pret to get a sandwich because they really like that specific sandwich and they've had it before, and they chose to eat in the office because the office has lunch together every day, and so they wanted to do that. And we understand that context.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I do.
I agree that humans are really complex, but I think we can't assume that animals don't have an equally complicated number of things going on, but from the surface it just looks simpler.
Okay. But to my day-to-day life, I think I find humans to be the most unpredictable factor. Other people. Yeah. And just to wrap up on my episodes of the year, I mean, this wasn't really an episode, this was a panel discussion, which we hosted with SWC, and the topic was, will computational models and machine learning ever be able to capture the full complexity of the brain? And this was such an amazing event. The speakers were Jay Bhagat, Clémentine Dominé, Pierre Glasser, and Aditya Singh. They were all guests on our episodes, and we had a really fun discussion about whether computational models will be able to capture the complexity of the brain.
Yeah, that was super, super cool. I really hope to have more events in the future, because I think that proved to us that it worked, but also that the audience was like really excited and engaged, and it was so cool to have like a real life discussion with so many more people. Oh, and I should also say that it is on Spotify. You can watch the whole video. So do check that out if you weren't able to attend. But yeah, I quite liked the question that we came up with. Because I think once we started like deep diving a little bit more into the question, I realized that it actually entailed multiple questions.
Yeah, it did.
Or like contained multiple questions within it.
Yeah.
because what even is the complexity of the brain, which was like a major thing that we discussed, and people had very different opinions about that.
Yeah.
Whether it's the molecular scale, like all the way down to the nanoscale, that makes it complicated, or is it the opposite end of the spectrum, so like the dynamical emergent properties that we're not going to be able to model. And it was so interesting hearing. I think most of our panel were more on the computational side, but they actually some of them had really biological perspectives, which made me really confused. I really liked that, because I honestly don't even know what I myself think. And yeah, it was so much fun. I think the panelists were just amazing, and they all had so many insights.
Yeah, they were really amazing at the way they explained things. And the audience asked so many questions. It was so nice. Yeah, it really makes me want to encourage you guys who are listening to message us your questions, whether on the Spotify app. You can comment on our episodes and just ask questions, and you can DM us. We're open to suggestions.
Yeah, or send us feedback on the website as well. And did your opinion on that question change from the event, or was your opinion of it before the event the same as at the end?
It didn't change. The panelists made some very, very convincing arguments, but I still feel like, for me, the crux of it is so far we can build a computer, but we can't build a brain. Maybe when we can, my opinion will change, but I think I would still be holding on to the belief that my personal opinion is that we won't be able to capture the complexity of the brain.
Yeah, I think actually I wish we had a few more hours to discuss that question, because there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to ask the panelists and get other people's opinions on. What about when it comes to development? Because that's where I research, but so much happens in development, and you're basically skipping that if you're building a computational model. I mean, you can use machine learning to teach a system, and basically in a way that develops it, but yeah, if you're not modeling brain development, and most of the brain's function, in my opinion, is based on its development and how the information that it receives during development, all the sensory information and all of our experiences and memories, shapes the function in adulthood or later in life. So if you're not taking that into account, then you basically have an isolated system. To me, the function of the brain is to respond to the world. Human brains have been evolving over time to fit in with Earth and the world that we live in. And if you don't have that context, then is it going to be the same brain,
Yeah, which is also why we can't perceive what it is like to be a cat or a mouse, because developmentally we have evolved differently. Yeah.
But yeah, I think so. I'm similar to you, because I don't know how you could think that you could model the complexity of the brain.
I think that I think that computationalists and engineers lean more in that sense, because I don't know about computationalists, but especially with hardware people, I think they see very much what
hardware people
versus bio people. They see very much the motherboard and all the wiring and the resistors and all of that as equivalent to what we have in the brain. So
yeah, which I understand. At a fundamental level, a neuron can be modeled as a circuit with resistors and capacitors, but that doesn't mean you can model the brain, because the brain works because of the information it receives and the outputs it produces, and the outputs influence the system itself, and there's plasticity. It's just plasticity gets in the way, and we don't even know the mechanisms. Because there's so many of them. So I understand why people would think you could model it, but also you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm telling you can't. No, but also more importantly, I think something that also became more and more prevalent throughout our panel discussion is you don't need to. Like, what is your goal? You know? Because if you're trying to come up with an intelligent system, then you don't need a brain. I mean, there's many species as well that don't even have a nervous system, but they are still intelligent.
Yeah.
Also, I think it was last year that we did the episode on the blob.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that was
how
a really fun
it's
episode.
an intelligent unicellular organism with no nervous system. And yeah, I mean, you don't need to model the full complexity of the brain for intelligence. And so, what do you really need it to model it for?
Yeah.
You know, like, you can get inspired by it and model a simplified version of it, and that might be sufficient for whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's more interesting to just understand the complexity of the brain than try to model it at this stage of human history.
Yeah, I agree. It also saves us a lot of complicated ethical questions, so...
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
I like to avoid those.
Yeah, so that's it in terms of my favorite
so
episodes.
Half an hour later. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And we basically covered mine as well. But I think I just want to shout out all of the amazing guests we've had this year, because we have had so many. So we also did an episode with Professor Carlos Ribeiro, and that was really cool, discussing his work on Drosophila as a model organism. And yeah, I mean, the title of the episode is The Mosaic of Science, so if that intrigues you and you haven't yet listened, go check it out. We also did an episode with George Mears on the evolutionary impact of the lichen lifestyle on the fungal genome, which was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but super interesting. And we did one with Professor Tiago Branco as part of our SWC series, discussing neural computation of naturalistic behaviors, as well as with Aditya Singh, who was on our panel, discussing dynamics of strategy learning of deep neural networks. We also had a couple of biochemistry themed episodes this year as part of our grants from the Biochemistry Society. So we've collated a little biochemistry series, including some really cool guest speakers on all different sides of biochemistry, such as with Dr. Rachel Jackson, we discussed ways to interrogate synaptic function. And we also had Ryan O'Meara talking about using protein engineering to tackle non-biodegradable materials.
That was super interesting. And he's also in Francis Arnold's lab,
who we've spoken a lot about.
Yeah, who's my idol for enzyme-directed evolution.
Yeah. And Inga Vanden Bosch spoke about transcriptomics and translational biochemistry and how material science can be applied to medical sciences. And we had Isabel Zane talking about deep mutational scanning and how to investigate protein behavior, as well as Sarah Nteki talking about visualizing and studying RNA, the ultimate mediator of life.
Yeah, that was a cool perspective on the function of RNA.
Yeah, I think the whole biochemistry series has really highlighted what we've, from early on, always been talking about, the structure-function relationship.
Yeah. And
whether structure equals function in terms of RNA, DNA, protein, transcription and translation. Yeah, it was really a really interesting journey into biochemistry, and kind of seeing how biochemistry, although it's investigating things at such a small scale, can really be applied to the real world. Yeah. Especially with Ryan's research on tackling non-biodegradable materials, and he really made me realize the severity of pollution that's happening in the world, and how it's happening all around us all the time, and the fact that his research can be applied to that is amazing.
Yeah, I felt the same way, and that with all of the biochemistry topics, it had such a close proximity to the application and to the impact. So that was really cool to, I guess, be taken on this journey of the science and then how is it getting used in the real world. So yeah, like Ryan's example was also like one that stuck in my head, and I was so aware now that, you know, when I shampoo my hair, I'm releasing all of these non-biodegradable particles.
Wasn't it siloxane?
Yeah, siloxanes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how in the morning, like around the time people go to work, there's a higher levels detected in the air because that's the time everyone's getting ready for work and like shampooing and bathing and stuff.
Yeah, and it's volatile and it comes out of soaps, and that fact will never leave my brain.
Yeah.
I'll always be there. As we should be.
Yes.
And also, not only have we had the amazing SWC series and the biochemistry series, but we've also had more episodes on our series in collaboration with Scientifica, which has been super exciting, called Tools for Looking into the Brain, where we discuss methods and techniques related to neuroscience, which is Scientifica's specialty. So this year we've had Dr. Adil Khan discussing 2-photon imaging and optogenetic techniques combined with that, as well as Dr. Sam Cook to discuss in vivo electrophysiology and how that's used to study learning and memory. And we also had, most recently, both Ashlan Reed and Mari Sosa, who are postdocs in the US, to discuss their experiences in research. And it was a very nice 2-part series where they kind of shared their advice on how to overcome some of these challenges that many people face as neuroscientists or scientists in general, and also the importance of community in research and helping you gain independent faculty positions or PI positions. Yeah, and they spoke about the community they're part of called Leading Edge, and that was really inspiring. I think those episodes, but also a lot of our guest episodes, have constantly made me feel really grateful for like having this opportunity to discuss directly with all of these people their advice or their insights into whatever, whether it's a topic or just general life advice. It's like, wow, I feel so privileged to be able to always have these conversations with these people and then connect with them in this way.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah. So thank you to all of our guest speakers this year, who have all been really amazing and brought something very unique to each episode.
Yeah, looking forward to having many more for next year.
Definitely, in which we have some really exciting episodes lined up. But don't forget that if you have any suggestions for topics, or even if you would be interested in speaking on the podcast, then do reach out to us on any form of social media, whether that's Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. To kind of wrap up, I want to ask you, what is the one thing you want to see from Neuroverse next year?
Ooh, I don't know. Does it have to be something new?
No, just, it can be anything.
I think I want to host another panel event. I think that would be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would like it to be a consistent thing. Like it maybe a yearly thing or bi-yearly. Can I ask the same thing back?
Sure, but I keep doing this, like I keep asking questions just in general, and then not having, like asking them merely because I want to hear answers, not because I want to answer them myself. And then somebody asks it back to me and I'm like,
oh no.
I never thought of that before. But like genuinely, because I wasn't thinking about it.
Yeah. That's really good though.
I don't know why it keeps happening to me. Like maybe I should, So now let me think of my answer. What would I like to see? I think I would just like to see us stay authentic.
Oh yeah.
Like I think what has really helped us grow this year is like having really strong collaborations and extending our series with the biochemistry grant and like the collaboration with Scientifica, and as well as amazing support from SWC.
Yeah.
And King's has also been supporting us. And I think what I would like to see is like alongside that we continue to also have like our authentic philosophy episodes where it's just like raw discussions, kind of like this right now, and just like us being us.
I feel that. I really feel that. Like it is amazing having all of these guest speakers, but I want to sneak in a few more episodes that are just the two of us.
Something I've noticed recently is listening to other podcasts, because I have to say, when I started the podcast, I didn't listen to podcasts almost at all. Like that was kind of the scariest thing, that I was starting a podcast with you. That's why I was a bit apprehensive, because I'm like, I don't really listen to podcasts and I don't know what they should be like.
I think that's the best thing though. I didn't listen to that many podcasts. I only listened to like one or two, but that was enough for me to go, I think there's a gap in the market. I think I think we have something we can provide.
Yeah, and I just trusted you on that.
Yeah. No, but I think it's nice having the clean slate, you know?
Yeah, no,
you have no baggage.
But I think what has been really interesting for me in the past year is I've been listening to a lot more podcasts. Not a coincidence that it's also like a lot more PhD lab work. But I'm starting to like understand what I appreciate in podcasts, and then kind of reflect on that and that to try to think about what I want in Neuroverse.
Yeah.
And there's one podcast that is my top all-time favorite. I listen to it all the time, called Overthink.
Okay.
And it's a philosophy one by two philosophy professors, but their conversations are so raw. It's kind of one of the podcasts out there that is more similar to Neuroverse, in my opinion, because it's like much more interdisciplinary in a way. I mean, it's much more philosophy based, but it's very like discussional. It's like discussing academic things, but in a very lightweight way. And yeah, it has really inspired me to like keep having conversations like that, because when they're discussing these topics, they always like apply it back to their personal lives or experiences, and I really enjoy listening to that because it makes me feel more connected to them.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, and also just in general, it's interesting that I've noticed my favorite podcasts are all philosophy related, because if I'm doing science every day, I also like to listen to things other than science.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that, the things that put me off the most of other podcasts, it's when I feel like it's not very genuine, like it's a bit scripted, it's a bit overproduced.
Yeah.
I prefer it, when it's just like a conversation.
I have another question. What's one general topic or like general topic area that you think is missing from Neuroverse?
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask something very similar.
Okay.
That I think is missing.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is missing, but I've mentioned earlier, I really enjoy how we sometimes have like themes like well-being, and I think that I'd like to see a couple more of those next year.
Yeah, I think we did more in the beginning.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
But let me think of something that is missing. I think we haven't done that much on engineering. And I think I would like...
Hardware people, where are you?
Exactly. I think it would be nice to have a few more engineering episodes. I think that'd be fun. Oh, also maybe art. We've done a couple collaborations with art people. It would be fun to do a few more.
Art people, where are you?
Art people, hardware people, we need you. Yeah, so I think, those two.
Okay, yeah.
I was gonna ask you, it's not as broad as yours, but what topic would you most like to do as an episode next year?
It's interesting because this like always changes for me, because I'll come up with an idea and be like, oh yes, but then executing it kind of scares me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't know that much about this topic. Like, maybe let's choose a different one. And then I get really excited when I find another one. I'm like, oh, this. And then I put it at the top of my list. And then the moment I come up with a new one, I put it at the top of my list.
Yeah.
So it's just confusing because I have like so many potential episodes at this point.
I find it funny because I do see like you have oftentimes like 3 or 4 highlighted, and I'm like, which is the next one? Because
and then I unhighlight and come up with new ones.
Because we're meant to just highlight like the one next one, but you usually do like 3 or 4. I'm like, okay.
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes it's more interesting to come up with a question that we can then discuss rather than coming up with a topic. Like when I came across the question of, is memory consciousness?
Yeah.
That was such a fun episode. Like that was a good topic that I hung on to.
We can do that more.
Yeah. I should just start writing down questions.
Yeah.
Okay, but if I had to choose one or maybe 3.
Yeah, go for it. I was actually going to say you can give me your top 3.
One I've been meaning to do for probably years is hallucinations.
Okay.
Because it probably all started when I read Oliver Sacks's book about hallucinations. And then, again, it was a topic that I was teaching on a psychology module. And I think it's really fascinating how it's studied and what it can tell us about conscious experiences, and how just studying subjectivity in like psychology experimental settings.
Yeah.
But yeah, hallucinations would be one.
Yeah. I would bring in some Aldous Huxley on that episode.
Oh yeah.
And his experiences with mescaline. He wrote a book on his experience on mescaline. It's a really good book. I recommend it. Doors of Perception. That is a beautiful book. Yeah.
Okay, then a more like neuroscience one. Somebody asked a question about this in our mycelium episode. It's about the extracellular matrix, which is basically the forgotten part of the brain. I mean, I didn't mean that to offend anyone who studies the extracellular matrix, but well, I don't know much about it, and I would love to have a guest speaker on to tell us about it. And I know that it has like important functions in brain development and function, and yeah, another episode I've also been wanting to do for a while is about brain organoids, which are like mini brains that you can create in a dish, but specifically how brain organoids might be able to be used as computers, like how we can harness the computational power of the brain, linking to the panel event, to actually like carry out computations. Yeah,
that's cool. I really like those. I have one last question. So recently, when you come up with topics, I kind of want to ask like what sparks that, and also when you've been preparing for episodes, how have you been researching about the topic recently?
Well, I think recently, to answer the second part, we've had so many guests that I haven't been preparing. No, but seriously, I like to come in with more of an open mind. It's fully intentional. But to answer the first part, how do I come up with topics? It's really just like when I come up with an idea and it feels like it would make a good episode. I don't know how to expand beyond that, but I think any kind of concept or idea that I come across, whether that's, sometimes it's been through reading articles, sometimes it's been through reading a single paper, and sometimes it's discussions with other people, like conversations with friends, that just makes me think like, ooh, I would love to find out more about this or do a little bit more research on this. Which is why, again, I find it more interesting when it's a single question, like a bit more of an abstract question that I feel, oh, this could be discussed from many perspectives, and like maybe I could bring in this specific perspective, like, oh, maybe I could talk about this philosophical question in the context of neuroscience. But also, like, I remember coming up with ideas as well when I've been to museums. Like if I go to an exhibition, actually all the exhibitions I've been to recently have sparked an episode. Or if it doesn't spark it, I'll talk about it. Yeah.
Cool.
What about you?
So in terms of preparing for episodes, I mainly read a couple papers and the bio of the person that we're interviewing. If it's just us, then I prepare a lot more. But I'm not as good at coming up with questions on the spot, so I try to prepare a few questions. But sometimes I also come in with an open mind.
I find that even if I prepare questions, I come up with better questions on the spot.
Oh, really?
Like, in the context of what they're explaining.
I want to be better at that because, yes, I do come up with a lot of follow-up questions on the spot, but I also feel like when recording, I'm aware of time and I don't want to take up too much time. And so, I don't know, I think I want to work on being a bit calmer in that way, to let my brain think for a bit longer, to then come up with better questions. And I guess that's why I prepare questions in case I don't come up with good questions on the spot. But also in terms of the first part, I think that I sometimes try to fit episodes with what is going on in my academic life, just to make my life a bit easier for myself. So I did the BCI episode in part because I was presenting a BCI paper at a journal club, and so that was really good prep for me. I'd like to do an episode on the cerebellum, not only because I'm researching the cerebellum, but also because I think it'll be good for me to just sit down and read as much as I can about it. I guess I don't think about all the time how much I learn through like the process of podcasting. Because
there are topics that I wouldn't know about if it wasn't for the podcast.
Yeah.
But that's also why I like that we normally, like for our listeners, we choose topics like independently.
Yeah.
And then we always come to record them without telling each other what we've prepared.
Yeah.
Which I think is the best way to do it. And we've just done it by chance like that from the start. But it works so well because we always like come across different papers and it challenges each other, because like if you choose a topic I may have never thought of ever and I need to go like research it.
Yeah.
That really pushes me. Then
Yeah.
we always come together and record and find like we have read different papers.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the same papers.
Yeah.
But yeah, we compare and contrast and that's fun.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing. I really like it when it's a topic that I haven't researched and I haven't heard anything about and I need to go and learn about it.
Yeah.
I find that so fun.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Okay, so to finish off, we want to say a big thank you to all of our listeners in the past year, and whether you joined us back in 2022 or 23 or 24 or if you're listening to this in the future. Thank you for supporting Neuroverse and helping us grow and keeping us motivated and keeping us going, and for all of your feedback and contributions to the podcast. And we're so excited for episodes to come in the new year.
Yeah, just to echo Clara, we're so grateful for all of your support and listenership, and I hope you keep enjoying the episodes. And of course, if you have suggestions, we're more than happy to listen to them. Thank you for coming along on this journey with us. Yeah, and I hope you have a wonderful 2025. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year! As usual, if you don't already follow us, check us out on Instagram and Twitter at neuroverse_pod, and check out our website neuroversepod.com for more information.